Appears to be streaming. Verifying stream. Looks like we are live and on the air, both on YouTube and Twitch. So welcome everyone to the Foolish Tech Show. It is a Thursday afternoon, and we're mainly here to provide you with support and answer any questions about our products and services. If you do have any of those, you can always feel free to jump over to foolishtechshow.com. We have a IRC chat that you can jump into in a couple different ways, and we'll be more than happy to interrupt whatever we may be talking about at the time to focus on that instead. Being that as it may, if we don't have any of those type of questions, then we will probably just be talking shop about random this and that. And yeah, you're more than welcome to participate in that. We always appreciate the feedback and connection with our community. Just keep in mind that any opinions expressed here are of the individual that expressed them and not of the company itself. So, how's everybody's Thursday going?
Well enough, thank you for asking.
That's good. That's good. Hey, HP Mike 47, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. Winky face. So not major news on the front. I am working on another update for Crypto Prevent. Probably won't be out today, but has just a few minor changes. One of them is there's an issue with bulk or white label installers showing as none, even though the protection's being applied. That issue is fixed in this next update that I'm working on. And then also a couple other little minor things. And then another registration issue to try to track down some of these other people that are experiencing it showing as free sometimes. So trying to get all that into an update and get that released as soon as possible for Crypto Prevent. But other than that, can't really give you an expected time on it because I haven't even gotten the coding stuff done yet to be able to do some testing on it yet. So I will definitely let you know and announce it here, and of course on the release notes blog post. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah. So anything good on the news? Anybody have anything they want to start off with? I always take away the show right at the beginning.
This is a funny story about. It looks like Snapchat recently had we're doing an IPO, I believe, and so a lot of people are the company's called Snap that does that, and a lot of people are very eager to get in while the price is still, get in while I guess prices or shares or whatever are low, so they want to get in at the beginning, I guess.
Mhm.
And so it appears as if they're mistakenly purchasing Snap Interactive, which is a different company. Now there may be some overlap in that they do video chats as well, but it's just interesting that that you probably want to, if you want to invest, particularly if you want to invest big, I would hope that you would
do a little research.
stock symbol research at the very least. Maybe, not to mention the actual application that they're offering up and other things. But I know it's very popular. I hear a lot of people using it, and it almost seems like shockingly obsessively used by certain.
Michael, you use it like 3 to 4 times a day.
Snapchat? No
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Do you ever notice when Johnny is just recording the screen?
I just got a snap from you right now.
That's you posting Snapchats.
Don't be posting Snapchats. Like people, I mean, you can do it with the faces on the walls and stuff like that too if you have pictures and stuff. But
good idea. We'll get a couple of pictures of you on our walls. Thanks for
I regret ever bringing.
Well, to completely distract you from that, have you watched Black Mirror yet, Michael?
No, I have not, and I know everyone's going to be like, "Oh, why not?" Yet, but
It is an incredible
I still
series.
also haven't watched Snowden, and so I'm a little bit behind the curve on those.
I mean, Black Mirror has been out for more years than Snowden, so.
Well, okay, well, whatever. But the point is that I'm a little bit behind the curve in those, but I do intend to get to it. When I do, I'll offer my input. But
Doctor, you watched it, right?
Yeah, I watched a couple episodes.
Oh, did you see the in the newest season, season 3, the
No.
bee drones?
No.
Well, apparently these scientists didn't either, because they're going to do that. They're currently working on drones to take over the bees' jobs when the bee apocalypse finally comes to a sad close. Yeah, in the Black Mirror one, it's of course based in England primarily because that's where the show originally started. But all of England had these little micro drones that essentially had replaced bees, and they were shaped like bees and acted like bees and just did the pollination stuff. They didn't create honey or anything, but they created their own hives and lived fairly autonomously. But if you can imagine having a fleet of micro drones like that could have some serious implications if security isn't met and up to snuff on that. And essentially, in Black Mirror episode, those drone hives end up getting hacked, and all the drones that are part of that hive end up being able to be controlled, and then are used by some killer to kill famous people that other people vote on social media deserve to be killed. So yeah, I hope they watch that as some of their research for creating these drones and try to prevent that kind of thing from happening. It is very sad that we have to even think about having drones to replace bees, but they don't even know why beehives are collapsing now. I saw another article, I didn't save it, but they were thinking it's just because humans are so prevalent and relentless and such. Was that your scroll wheel on your mouse, Proctor?
Yeah.
Jeez, did you add like a baseball card to its spokes or something?
No.
Jeez.
oh, that's a good analogy, though. I must compliment you on that, Bradley. Thank you.
That's what it sounded like.
Speaking of which, oh wait,
I just wanted to add some more noise to the mix.
what's that Stranger show that's coming back on?
Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things. That's coming on back on. I think Halloween, right?
Yeah, on Netflix.
Okay, good. I don't know why I just thought of that.
Is that all you had on that? You're just like, what's that Stranger Things movie? I was I don't know. It really hasn't captured me yet.
I like it. Instant fan.
But
I like retro. I like 80s stuff. I grew up largely in the 80s, so yeah. At any rate,
why I'm not a big fan of the 80s.
Yeah. At any rate, this is an interesting article on why drivers are dated, or why you find Windows drivers dated the way that you sometimes see, with a large number of them all being a specific date and time, seemingly irrespective of when they were actually last altered.
2006, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's 6/21/2006, June 21st.
Yeah. Did you read it, and can you tell us all why? A brief synopsis.
Yeah. Okay, well, it all comes down to this. The way that they determine what driver to pick, if there's an exact match for the hardware ID, it it moves to the top of the list, and then if there's if there's multiple drivers, then it goes to the version number, and then it goes to the date or something like that. Read it for those specific details. Read the article. But the point is that if they had driver dated whenever they decided to release it, a new driver, and they had various versions, you would have situations potentially where their driver would be installed above a manufacturer's driver, and in effect, they want to always defer to the manufacturer's driver, or that's the way their code is supposed to work. So,
although I have not noticed that as much on Windows 10.
Well, yeah, I didn't see anything specifically related to. It's rather short.
I didn't see which versions it talked about either, but so the breakdown of it was if a driver provides a perfect match to the hardware ID, then it becomes a top candidate. And if more than one driver provides a perfect match, then the one with the most recent timestamp is chosen. If there's still a tie, then the one with the highest file version number is chosen.
Okay, so yeah.
So basically, it is essentially what you were trying to say, that they want to support custom drivers from the manufacturers directly, because that's how Windows was designed, essentially to make manufacturers provide drivers. When did Windows start providing drivers? Has that always been a thing, or?
Oh, it always has been a thing, because certain base drivers are necessary to simply even interact with the computer. So drivers for input devices were an absolute minimal requirement initially, as was minimal display drivers and various other drivers. But as core functionality started to become replaced, like, for instance, USB, which didn't exist for a long period of time in the Windows environment, came about in later revisions of Windows 95. And since then, they've become fundamental for connecting base input devices. So it's absolutely necessary for Windows to include base USB support driver. And
I guess I'm not as focused on those basic drivers like safe mode style drivers. I'm more focused on when did they start providing hardware specific drivers even. Was that in 95? Was that in 3.1?
Yeah,
I have to be honest, I really wasn't into Windows as much in 3.1 to know.
So
I had a disk from the manufacturer that said setup,
So I recall going through the early days of adding the very first CD-ROMs and sound cards, and CD-ROMs that were chained off of sound cards, and various other weird things that you would
probably find
anachronistic today. But basically, when I was doing that, it was always typically necessary to have the most recent drivers available, and this was at a time when even base interaction with a CD, there was no predefined standard. Manually specifying buffer sizes, for instance, for buffering data to and from a CD was not uncommon back in those days, and so drivers were incredibly necessary, even when DOS was considered to to provide functionality, even for your sound cards, loading the sys files and everything like that. So I think this has always been done, and those were so. But again, that, I guess, back then in those days, Windows didn't have provisions for those things at all, and so it was just through a third-party framework, and they didn't have anything. But again, as the peripherals became base components of a system, in other words, it used to be that all operating systems were installed via floppy disk. Well, that shifted to CDs, and then to DVDs, and then they went away, and sort of just USB flash drives and other sorts of portable media devices. But when it becomes
Downloads.
standard practice, that's when you're kind of guaranteed to have them in the operating system's base driver set.
Man, that'll be a weird switch. Like, kids won't even know that they used to get CDs and extra stuff with their products. Like, you barely even get manuals anymore. Like, you pretty much have to go download the manual and the drivers and everything.
Yeah,
Like, the most you might get is like a little card that says "Go here for this."
and errata, or or whatever. But
Well, many times these days you don't even get a box; it's just a little card.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're buying something like software, especially, yeah.
I honestly can't remember the last time I bought software that wasn't online.
that was not the case. I waited. I can't tell you. I
can't
waited in
either.
line outside of a store to purchase MS-DOS 5.0 the minute it came out.
Yeah, but what's the most recent?
No, I was talking
software
about recently. I don't remember the last time I went to the store and bought software. I've bought everything online for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the most recent thing that I've ever purchased was I did remember walking in and purchasing a game, a video game.
Actually, I buy TurboTax every year, so that's out the window.
You buy that in the
You
store?
buy that in the store?
I do buy it in the store.
Okay, well then,
Why
there
do
you
buy
go.
that in the store, but not on?
Get it on sale.
That's interesting. That they don't offer discounts on their website. I guess they have to support that box media style somehow, so they charge you for it in the store. Anyway, they charge people that just buy it online more so that they can make more boxes to sell it to you in the store on a sale.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they stopped selling it in stores, you would revert to buying it online without any quorum, or?
Oh, sure.
So it's just not the price that's the big thing for you. It's just that it happens to get discounts in the store.
Yeah, and I think I've bought it online some years too. It just depends what's going on.
Gotcha. Well, that was interesting. And Michael, I do appreciate you bringing up that really old memory of one thing that I disliked about building XP-based computers was that stupid little audio cable you had to run from the CD drive to your sound card, and then having to determine where that was on a motherboard.
Oh yeah, for actually playing direct CD audio. Yeah.
And they always gave you like this little tiny short cord, so you couldn't like run it around and make your cable management look all nice. Like, you have like all the other cables are all like zip tied and looking perfect and everything, but then you got this one cable going from the CD drive down to your sound card or motherboard somewhere that just looked completely off and was not.
Well, you have to understand there were still
one of the big sellers in my store were longer audio CD cables with multiple connectors on them.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, because it's all because of the interface. They hadn't standardized on the connector for that on CD drives. They didn't standardize on the data connector for CD drives. That's why, like I said, some of the earliest ones used very proprietary connectors. Basically, like one of a very few select manufacturers your drive could be made of and work with this interface, instead of a more flexible neutral interface. So it was still, it was basically a case of something that you've mentioned before, of hardware kind of getting ahead of the software. And in this case, not so much software, but the user interaction with the hardware. And so it's the cabling is what did it. is what made your profit with those things. Because they would never, you would never know. Any two CD drives you purchased could use two different interfaces off the shelf. It was a crazy time period, and so that's why standards are so good. And it's kind of very noteworthy to point out that it wasn't all that long ago where there weren't standards amongst things, and you couldn't depend on compatibility. A great example of that, I've alluded to this before, was the original EGA compatible boards that came out. EGA. I bet most folks out there were probably born after VGA existed, but let's see.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was an EGA.
Yeah, so it started. There's a CGA was the original. It was based on displaying 4 colors out of a palette of 16.
Wow, how'd they get to V so fast?
No, well, they were called color graphics adapter, CGA enhanced graphics adapter, and then video graphics array. That's where those initials
Talk about lack of standards.
came from.
Like your naming convention. We'll just go C, then E, then let's go V. Let's go V with this one. Like, it makes more sense when you tell what the anagram anagram is it?
Not
That's not anagram. What's it called when you shorten things?
Oh, jeez. I look.
Made me forget the English language.
Oh,
Broken me.
Acronym.
Acronym. Thank you.
There we go. It makes more sense when you mentioned what the acronyms stand for, but like just saying it, there's CGA, then EGA, and then VGA. It's like, come on, where's the standards there? That's completely lack of. But yeah, man, that's a big trip down memory lane there. It's interesting. Like I didn't get into any of the computer stuff until I actually started working at that shop as a intern turned paid employee for a school work study program. What are those called? Man, I can't think of words today at all.
Internship?
It was is it work study?
Could be.
Anyway, at senior year, I had the opportunity to participate in that work study whatever, where you basically go out and get a job, and the last 2 periods of your day you get off to go to that job. So I was like, of course, wanted to have the most lax senior year ever. So I had all AP courses that didn't matter. I could pass or fail them, didn't matter at all. And then the last 2 periods, I got to go work at an awesome computer shop at the time. And that was like, I didn't get into any of the computer technicals or drivers or any of that stuff past like having to fix stuff that I broke myself. And I enjoyed trying to learn and fix that stuff, but it wasn't really until I got that job at the shop that I actually started to learn things like VGA and those CD audio cables and stuff like that. And all of it started off because of games and Juarez.
Yeah. It's interesting, the internet wasn't around at all, even conceived of when they were talking about those types of things. So if you look back, you're basically going to have to find, basically computer magazines that discuss this type of thing. I know a concept that is kind of a little bit dated today, of course.
Which you can read on the Internet Archive.
Yes, you can. And I wanted. Do you have a good link for that? I'm trying to find one. I know Google has, and Google Books has a lot of InfoWorld. It has all of like PC Magazine and InfoWorld.
Here you go. This is the best link for it. You got Byte magazine. I've heard of that one. Computer magazine or Compute magazine. I've heard of that one.
Just to give you an idea, I'm looking at a full page advertisement for an EGA board based on the ISA bus, 8-bit ISA bus, costing $399, capable of displaying 16 colors from a palette of 64 colors in 640 by 350 resolution. Man, oh man, times have changed. With a whopping 256K of screen memory.
Nice. Yeah, they got a whole lot of magazines on that Internet Archive. I don't know majority of these. Quite a lot. Quite a lot. Well, for something completely different and totally off topic, here's what happens when you attach razor blades to a high spinning top. Ends up being pretty cool.
Whiskers help us out with acronym.
And what's the most aggravating thing about your phone? I would say putting the screen protector on if you use those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anymore just
Pretty
because
annoying.
of how aggravating it is to try to use those.
Agreed.
Do any of y'all still use screen protectors?
I do.
I'm sorry, screen protectors for what?
But most stores will put them on for you if you buy them in a store, but if you don't.
Yeah, I have one on my phone currently.
So you have a screen protector, Michael? You have a screen protector?
Yes, that's correct. I do. Indeed.
That is insane. I haven't needed a screen protector since Gorilla Glass 2, at least.
I mean, you know, as far as it being required, absolutely. I don't know. I haven't cared to test it out. I wouldn't want to scratch. But
yeah. Well, Johnny's tested it out plenty of times. She doesn't have a screen protector either. I do say that a case is still required, especially if you have one of the S7s that have a soda glass back.
mm-hmm.
Terrible manufacturing choice, but a case is still required, and possibly that might be why I don't do the screen protector thing anymore, is because just having the case enough protects majority of it. And I've had fairly good luck with Gorilla Glass. If Nick was here, he would have quite the opposite opinion about Gorilla Glass. But I haven't had any issues with it, and Johnny has dropped her phone more times than I can count. She even ran over it with her computer chair, and it was fine on the screen. So I'm not a big fan of screen protectors. But anyway, point being, there is now a Japanese robot that will put on screen protectors for you. And of course, in Japanese style, it's all cute and animated. So I thought that was pretty cool. But it is interesting that y'all still use screen protectors. I don't know what kind of glass.
This is the first phone I've ever had a screen protector on, and I think I got it because the store threw it in and put it on for me.
I also found that the responsiveness was not nearly as good.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that as well.
Having a screen protector on it. So I actually would rip off screen protectors at times when it got aggravating, to the point where I felt like it wasn't responding to my touch as I intended. But it is surprising, Michael, that you have one on the S7 Edge. I really don't even see a reason to have it on there.
Okay. Well, I mean, consider ripping it off.
But I mean, do you see any of that touch issue or the responsiveness? You're fine with how it acts and feels, or now also?
Yeah, that's never been an issue for me.
Did you get one of the glass screen protectors
No,
or
it's
one of
the film ones.
film? Yeah. The glass ones aren't that bad as far as the responsiveness, but yeah, the film ones I hated.
If it's
Especially
put on
with
correctly,
prayers.
I don't think that there's much of an issue.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to slide your finger around, there's no way that that is as smooth as glass would be. So,
I never consider it to be a point of concern.
I've never had an issue with mine being responsive that wasn't OS related.
that's because you got an iPhone. Um, yeah, no, I really don't enjoy screen protectors. Now, I do probably take a little bit more adamant care of where my phone is, how it is, and what gets done to the screen. Like, I keep my phone in my pocket and I don't put other things in that pocket. I use my other pocket to carry things. So I guess I do have a more heightened sense of it and try to be fine with it. But Johnny is not as aware of those kind of things sometimes, and she's been fine without the screen protector. But I think the Gorilla Glass has come a long, long way. So I enjoy it. But Nick had a phone that he dropped and it had Gorilla Glass on it, and he said it shattered. So just thought that stuff was interesting. Other interesting news. Apparently, since Google's getting away with reading your emails and giving you ads, Cortana has tried to go the extra mile and read your email, not to give you ads specifically, but to remind you to do things that you said that you would do in emails. This is actually a decent example of AI actually being useful on those voice assistants or virtual assistants as they were. I can understand the privacy implications from doing this, but how do y'all feel about this concept? If the virtual assistants start reading your emails and messages and say, "Hey, do you remember you told Joe that you were going to send him money today, or
Yeah,
meet him for lunch?"
I'm going to murder all my virtual assistants. Right? It's not legal to murder a virtual assistant, is it? It's just a real life assistant is the one that you can't murder. Yeah. Okay. So that being the case, yes, I want to do that.
Okay. Well, we got Michael's opinion. I was not surprised on his privacy-centric answer about that, but I don't know. I think it actually, like I said, I kind of think it's something useful that these virtual assistants can do.
Look, that being said, I have used them. Okay, so I know that's crazy that, it is sometimes convenient to, speak something, rather than type it out at certain times, in that sense. Limited use, not to that type of integration. If Cortana simply was a method to interpret my speech on a case-by-case basis as I deem necessary, I'd have no problem with it. But once it starts getting its hooks into all those other things, I know it limits.
That's not a virtual assistant. That's a text-to-speech or speech-to-text.
Well, I understand that, but a lot of times it's all bundled in the same one is doing,
Yeah, that is true. But and see, that's kind of my point is I haven't really found the extreme usefulness of having a virtual assistant. Now,
without it doing that, right? I mean, you want, for your purposes, for complete automation, for complete,
I want an assistant that would help me do things and tell me things and remind me.
I would like a virtual assistant that is just as helpful as a physical.
And for instance, yes,
assistant.
Wouldn't you hire a physical person and then give them potentially your passwords to do your work for you? That's known to happen all the time, of course.
Yeah, I mean that could be even a worse compromise of security, possibly.
And it could be.
But if the data is getting uploaded to a third party and it's being analyzed off of my device, then I think that has lots of potential issues.
I mean, but Michael, I didn't even think about it, but Michael does bring up a good point that you may have, if you did hire a physical assistant, you might would just give them access to read all your emails and
Yeah, exactly.
even reply to them at points. But
So it's not unheard of, this concept. It even predates the technology, to tell you the truth. But the problem is with data mining. It's that in that case, it would be the compromise would be the damage that one person could do, that assistant could do that you hired, and typically that, particularly back then, would have been somewhat limited. This day and age, though, once that data is available and then spread, and you can't, first of all, you can't get it back, and then how it's interpreted and used, it's only your best guess before you're compromised in some way without taking drastic steps. I, 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 in concept, I like it, but until we can verify security, end-to-end security, maybe quantum computing will help with this. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't feel comfortable enough with hearing about hacking reports every day, hearing about security cameras being compromised every moment, hearing about manufacturers, basically publishing the weakest security devices and shouting out the rooftops that these are IoT and plug as many of them in as you can get your hands on. In this climate, in this security climate that we exist in currently, I don't think I can condone that at all.
yeah. I just found it interesting that they're finally starting to be a little bit more proactive and not just reactive, which is what I feel like. I mean, honestly, the most that I've used the assistants for is like setting a timer or queuing up some music, things like that. Like nothing actually really useful per se.
Oh, good price on an inexpensive mouse. I don't like mice, but this is this actually Microsoft? I guess is the question. It's got good reviews though. Dirt cheap, dirt cheap. eBay though.
Yeah, I would kind of be scared about that rating as well, coming from a dirt cheap mouse. Our friend Brytech has gone into quite a few rants on the branding of DPI and mouse.
Well, yeah. But if you look up the reviews, though, that does actually seem to hold some water here.
But then with eBay, you have to wonder if that's actually going to be what you're getting, or if you're getting a knockoff
So
one.
this is the final thoughts on a review. But yeah, you're right. Let's see. So I guess this was around the launch of this. So they're talking about 30 British pounds at that time. That would have been like down here $60. To have it down to under. So part of this, though, part of the reason this is a good deal, I think, is because of the Brexit thing and because of how bad the British pound has fallen recently. I think it's I think it's probably for no other reason. So if you could buy something, if they haven't adjusted their prices yet, I know shipping might be an issue potentially, but
yeah. Well, Michael, I found another article related to your debilitating disorder.
Whoa! Whoever said it was debilitating?
You did when you couldn't go swimming.
Okay, that's not exactly. It doesn't qualify.
That does qualify. Anyway, apparently this startup has been keeping a low profile, but they've raised 20 million in venture capital, and they're talking about a blood sugar tracker. It kind of looks like it's just like a stick-on type thing. But they're talking about wellness as a service and things of that nature.
Okay, they're intending to market it as a product for metabolic insight for non-diabetics rather than to diabetics who regularly need to track their glucose. Now, why is that?
Because they require FDA approval.
Yeah, and they haven't obtained that. Yeah.
They haven't even begun to seek FDA approval. But it looks way less intrusive.
Yeah, and it probably has suffered some severe limitations, like the inability to accurately measure it. Now, might
It
get
does say it
brought.
needs daily calibration too.
Oh, it better be accurate if it needs continuous calibration like that. But the problem is you sweat, usually with something that's placed on or near the skin. You have to worry about that. Minimally invasive. The problem.
But I mean,
The problem I have with these is it's more like they're marketing the app than it is
the device.
the device and the technology, and then anything that would make me potentially consider something like this would be FDA approval and measurements on how accurate and how fast it reads out. So it's got to be missing the mark in one or more of those categories. That being the case, I'm not so sure I would consider it. Now, look, I guess I'm all for new people getting into markets, trying to develop things to improve people's lifestyle that could increase competition and could allow for lower prices and better devices in the future. The problem with that theory is that very much exactly what we said, like getting the FDA approval. That is typically getting FDA approval for something takes years of time and in many cases millions of dollars in budgeting, if not more so, depending upon what specifically you're trying to do. And that being said, there can be all the competition in the world for things that don't need FDA approval, but that will never go on to fulfill larger healthcare needs. And I also worry about this in the context. I don't think this is related to this specifically, but I worry about it in the context of these Kickstarter funding, wild funding spree, things that sprees that these companies go on, and then ultimately nothing ever comes of it. I worry about that too. And in the case of oh, I got a great idea, fix the world, cure diabetes, and it starts with an app, and it's got 3 people. One person wrote the app, the other person had the idea, and the other person had diabetes, and and maybe that's how this started, but it's I don't think it's nowhere near mature enough to make those differences that are probably enticing them to get involved in this.
Yeah,
it's kind of yeah.
Well, the interesting point that brings up, though, is that they're marketing it towards people that don't need to do that regularly. So is that, and one of the quotes in here that I was just reading is, this is a quote from Janet McGill, MD, Professor of Medicine and Director of Fellowship in Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Metabolism at Washington University. It says that there is a risk that too much information would create unnecessary worry, concern, and healthcare issues that are not warranted. I would fully expect that the persons needing it the least would be the most likely to want to wear it. And that's kind of where I was going with it. Is like, why, if this is, I mean, this is essentially marketed at me to try to keep track of if I'm going diabetic, right?
So here's where that breaks down, and she does bring up a very, very important point. So blood sugar fluctuates naturally, even in people. When you sit down and eat, your blood sugar after eating is going to be high. Does that indicate that you are diabetic? No, it does not. It's a short-term effect, and the body compensates it for it relatively rapidly. However, your blood sugar does fluctuate. For instance, in the morning, one of the key factors that causes most people to wake up is the release of hormone that also has the side effect of raising blood sugar. So could it be possible that you tested your blood sugar in the morning hours or the early morning hours, and you got that result? All sorts of dietary eating, consuming alcohol, eating different
And
types
maybe
of
those
food.
people would be like checking right after those situations every time.
Yeah, and
then,
all sorts of other things influence it too. You could have effects, like I said, of alcohol consumption or other things that could change the way blood sugar readings might occur in either the short or longer term in your body. And without taking into account all those variables, making a determination about your wellness based upon a flashpoint, with a constant glucose monitor that's reading it out periodically over time over the course of days and weeks, that provides enough detailed information to make some judgments on, because you can see those rising and falling and follow it and track it closely. But unless it's providing that level of detail, it'd be no better than the traditional method we have, which is pricking your finger and getting the results. But even that, and the vast majority of diabetics still do it that way, but it's a single point in time. You could have 4 readings a day that are perfectly normal, and the rest of them could all be screwed up, and so there could still be a problem. That's why they combine blood sugar tests with things like A1C. The A1C analysis and the A1C reading is the average. It's been known and proven to be the average of the past 3 months for your blood sugar level. And that's a much better overall factor to determine your health, is to measure A1C. I might argue that instead of measuring blood glucose, they should do something to improve the measurement of A1C. That can already be done relatively quickly, within minutes, within a modern office, and not even require equipment, or at least expensive equipment, to accomplish. So that would tell them, if they had an A1C that was bad, it would almost certainly, without a doubt, tell them if something was right or wrong with them, and there wouldn't be any of these cases of it showing a number that would cause somebody concern when there isn't a problem.
uh-huh.
And so if that's the way they want to market it, if that's some sort of awareness thing, then that's the route they need to take. And that's a measure. The A1C test is the hemoglobin H1AC test, is a measurement of the amount of glucose buildup on your hemoglobin in your body, and that kind of gives an idea of the levels. The higher the levels of the glucose in the bloodstream, the more it's going to be deposited there, and that ratio is apparently well monitored, and that's one of the reasons they chose that, or is well known, rather. So, but if this does have the potential to improve something one way, either through competition or through health improvements, but maybe they needed to think it through a little bit more, possibly. And and things get a little bit of media attention, and then they disappear, and then we never hear another story about it again. And I just would hope that if I come back and check these guys out in a year, that they'll have made some progress.
Yeah, especially considering they said that they wanted to release it this year.
Well, yeah, time will tell with all of these things, I suppose.
All right, well, for something else completely different, apparently they found out that algae could survive for up to 1.5 years in outer space.
Yeah, this is not the first time we've known that things can survive in outer space. There's bacteria that can survive. There's viruses that can survive, and now something a little bit more complex.
Yeah, so some interesting tests went into that, it looks like.
Huh. I
Although
wonder
they
what the
haven't-
implication. What's the implication of this, though? I mean, how does this change things?
Well, they're trying to find out how organisms are affected by open space conditions without any kind of protection against it.
Well, we've certainly known that.
Certain things can, but they also say in the article that they haven't checked for any damage to the DNA of it yet, so that could bring some variation or differences.
Well, they also note that this provides support if they do show that it's feasible. It provides support for the idea of panspermia, which is the concept where external bodies delivered the base materials needed to start life on this planet. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that algae from another planet came and hit us, and that's what caused life to develop on here. But it could, by extension, mean that.
Now, does that mean that they were able to survive a year and a half in space? So that's how long the
Well, most of the
experiment
time, most of the panspermia stuff in that regard usually refers to the base compounds, water and organic elements, not necessarily, carbon carbon chains and things like that aren't alive per se, but are, the kind of direct predecessors of life. And then those materials, once they got here and got into our relatively conducive environment for life, with lots of water and other things, were able to kind of interact in a new way and spark that. So those things that weren't actually alive were transported much longer distances in space, and they were small enough to be ostensibly preserved or frozen in such a way that they weren't damaged. This, of course, is, like I said, something much larger. The idea that an actual organism, a plant in this case.
Yeah, the first plant to experience this type of thing. But they also did mention that this all occurred in ideal conditions. So they had desiccated, which apparently means dehydrated.
Yeah, removing the water.
And then during that time, they were kept dormant with no growth, no development, and almost no metabolism. So,
yeah, well, that you would expect it because of the temperatures involved and whatnot. Yeah, and they also probably weren't exposed to the radiation that's omnipresent outside of the magnetosphere of the Earth. One of the advantages to having a magnetic field, as we've talked about, is the protection from radiation, cosmic rays.
Oh yeah, because ISS is so low, it would still be under that.
Yeah, so the people on the space station don't have to necessarily worry about those things, but something traveling farther would. So, read into it what you will, but it is impressive to note that that can occur.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool. Then I also thought this was pretty cool, which is MIT and made a robot out of the Segway scooter. I had actually been interested in getting one of those Segway scooters like that one. Then they came out with the unicycle version, and I was kind of interested in getting that one too. So I was kind of torn, but I ended up not getting either of them because I don't really need them for any reason. So even for like, I wouldn't use it for there's nowhere. I don't live in an area where it's conducive to take that kind of thing around. But it was pretty cool that they turned this into a robot that focuses on elder care, and this was coming from a robo hackathon. So I thought that was pretty neat. And
you know, there is this increasing concern about the elderly population. It's more people are living older longer, and so the constant rate of people over a certain age is still increasing year over year in this country, and that means that the infrastructure we have today to care for our elderly is not prepared for, you know, the next 5 years or 10 years for the type of growth in that area that they're expecting to see. And so it's a huge money thing for companies to focus on that, and I think we'll continue to see more and more innovations along those lines, particularly with robots. I mean, you know, we've known about this for years. They started, you know, you see the commercials all the time for the thing that gets you up the stairs. You know,
oh yeah,
right? It's basically the same type of thing, just a little bit more advanced. Gregory has a question regarding D7X Alpha.
No, Gregory, it wouldn't be sent to your email. You'd have to join the show and ask for it like you have, and I will find the link here and send it to you, hopefully within your time limit there. Nick hasn't been posting it since it's only in the alpha stages. There's not a lot on top of that, so he hasn't posted it out there, but he did provide a download link and will offer it to people that join the show. So I'll DM it to you right now. Key thing to keep in mind is you need to have a copy of D7.2 that you're not going to use in production, and take that download that I just DM'd to you and copy that into that folder with a D7.2 session already started. So you'll have D7.2 opened and the session started, and then just close out of it regularly, and then run that D7.2X alpha build. And you can test and play around with it from there. And then on top of that, also make sure that you keep an eye on these 2 pages, as there will probably be more info coming out later about those. Nick has an update that he's been working on for it, and we'll release that in there as well. He said it should be auto updating, but past that, I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of where it stands currently. So we'll be sure to get Nick to give an update on that a little bit more at a later time and date here. So let us know if you have any questions with it, and like I said, definitely make sure you check out those 2 pages and the known issues, and make sure you're running it from within a D7.2 folder that you already have an open session started on. That'll be your best route to start with, and don't use it in production. Don't use it anywhere near production. Make sure you're using it only for test purposes. You're not going to see a lot of changes on the top, but that's kind of what we're looking for in this alpha build. Is he's replaced all the underlying code with his D7X code that he's been working on, and we want to have it so that D7.2 is exactly functional as it was or currently is running on top of that D7X code. So yeah, just let us know about that, and feel free to play around with it. And thanks for joining us and asking us about it. I apologize if it seemed like we were supposed to email it out or post it anywhere, because that was not the case. But otherwise, Michael, have you heard of this Oni tool? Tor's Uni Pro. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but
No, I didn't.
apparently it's been out since 2012 for computers, but now they have a mobile app for it, and it's the Open Observatory of Network Interface project. And essentially what it's doing is trying to collect evidence of internet censorship, detecting systems responsible for censorship and surveillance, measuring speed and performance of your network, and it has open data. It is free for use, and it is backed by Tor, the awesome open source project for anonymity.
Nothing wrong with this, but my internal skepticism does Twitter a little bit. Did I say Twitter? Jeez. No, did I? Anyway, I was just because it was staring at the stock ticker thing for Twitter. But anyway, they're taking a lot of statistics and gathering a lot of information during this process of determining whether or not they believe that you are being censored. This covers statistics about your internet connection speed and your activity with certain servers. That's enough information potentially to be a privacy concern for me. So exposing this data to them is potentially giving some potentially.
Well, I haven't tried it yet.
Location or personal information.
It's not that it's using your data. It's that I read a different article, not this one or the one I posted, but I believe what it does is you open it up and it tries to go to various sites on its own and then tracks that information about it. It's not like you install it and it monitors your data and connectivity and objectives. I believe it's the opposite route where it tries to go out and do things.
Well, I do see that where it does, but effectively, this my same concern is still happening. It's going there, and then it's comparing what it found with what you found. So effectively, that you found data is still, going back and forth to them, and that's
but what's wrong with the data that it's reporting back? Like,
I'm not saying anything is wrong. It's for a very good purpose. And
but you're saying that you're worried about that data.
Well, and okay, well, again, just like I turn off location on my phone, it's that type of thing. It's that type of worry. It's not,
So they're gonna link you to your location based off the data that you provided, and then they provided openly.
I mean, I'm just saying you have to be willing to expose some of your traffic
coming from the project that tries to keep your anonymity.
Anonymity. Yeah, that's a good point.
Seems like that might be the opposite of what they might try to do. I'm just saying. I don't know for sure, but I would assume.
Well, okay, so all right, I understand where you're going, but remember the article, at least here, presents it throwing up the fact that it monitors over 1,200 websites, quote, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and all this other stuff. Those are used by so many people, and I just, this is basically a huge amount of data that this company could potentially have access to, monitoring that type of thing. If of course everyone installed it and downloaded and installed it, but
used it though. That's the other side.
I know, but is that?
But it's not that you're using it to go to those sites yourself. It's not like you're using it so that you can log into Facebook and all those other sites.
No, I get that. That's the point of comparison for it. But
It just mimics it.
well, I guess I'll go into the details of how it works. But
Yeah, it doesn't look like they send anything that would locate you specifically. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting project, and I'm surprised I had not heard of it until
well,
they
I
released
heard of the internet being out in the Cameroon, and this is designed to potentially,
pick up
bring
on
those things
that.
to light. Yeah, yeah. And in that sense, I am wholeheartedly for it because of that. I
Yeah,
just,
or finding out that your country blocks torrent sites like the UK is doing.
yeah.
Because that means that the government is actively manipulating your connectivity. And I would think you would want to know that more than the fear of this project possibly being able to link you to anything specifically.
So Uni does scan your TCP, DNS, HTTP, and TLS connections for tampering. If it can scan them, then it has access to them.
Yeah, but then maybe you can use it to test your VPN connectivity and leakage and stuff too.
It sounds
And if
pretty.
your VPN provider is manipulating.
It sounds like it's on the up and up. I'm gonna I'm gonna be hesitant, but I'm gonna give it a thumbs
Do you
up.
not use Tor at all?
I do from
Are you
time to
not
time.
worried about them tracking and monitoring you?
Well,
Because they have access to all the exact same data this app would have.
but yeah, I mean, I'm always, whenever I'm using a third-party service, I'm concerned about the data that goes back and forth. But
Well, I just thought it was interesting. Otherwise, last link I have for today, it looks like Signal, the highly touted encrypted messaging app, is trying their hand at video and voice calling. There is another one out there, Wire, which has actually been criticized for some of its not actually encrypting things. Even the maker of it says that they wish they could do things better in that regard. So just keep that in mind. But it looks like Signal is trying their hand at it, and that is something that is interesting and would be welcomed. However, it is a lot more data to take on than just simple messaging and texting back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see how this holds up to something like Wire that's been out for a little while and has had a few updates and some time on it. And then again, compare it to things like Ring Central or Hangouts and Skype and such. So thought that was interesting. All right, well, we have gone past our hour limit for the day, so I suppose we should go ahead and wrap her up unless anybody else had anything specific they want to talk about or add in on. Proctor, you ran off during the conversation I was going to ask you a question about. Since you do have access to and possibly utilize the primary and probably most renowned virtual assistant, do you find yourself using Siri, and do you have examples of what you use that for, or do you just completely ignore Siri altogether on your iPhone?
I use Siri, but in general, Siri is stupid.
Okay. So about on
She
par with Google Home?
normally results in me cussing her out.
Okay. About on par with Google Home, or does it do certain things better? Or, I mean, what are you looking to get out of it when you do use Siri?
Many
Just
times
asking
just asking questions. And normally, I don't know if it's my speech. She normally doesn't a lot of times doesn't understand what I say, or just isn't able to answer my question.
Well, you do have some very strange questions at times, given what you've told us about your Google Home interrogations. But I was just interested in that since we did spend a little bit of time on the voice stuff, and I mean Siri was pretty much the first one if you don't consider Google Now as a virtual assistant, which they didn't rebrand it until recently with the Google Home and Pixel release as an assistant, quote unquote. I think Siri was the first one to hit the market, and definitely is by far the most popular one in usage. Possibly Alexa is catching up, but I still believe there's probably more iPhones than there are Echoes and Dots and things. So
I mean, some features that I would like to have in a virtual assistant, given if there is security in place to protect my privacy, I would like the assistant to be able to listen to my phone calls, and if I mention in a phone call that I'm making a meeting, setting up a meeting, it would automatically stick it in my calendar. Things like that would be great.
So that would be like what we talked about with Cortana, reading your emails and reminding you
Justine.
about those things.
Right,
Justine
right.
would
Just
totally
voice
do
instead of the emails.
Oh yeah, Johnny mentions Justine from, what was that movie's name?
that.
Why Him? Why
Yeah.
Him with
Yeah.
had Brian Carson and Michael lapping at his dog.
Bryan Cranston and James Franco and a girl. I can't remember who she was.
Thank you for interrupting your dog face infecting and giving you allergies time to answer that question.
Yeah, the dog is barking at me. She apparently needs my attention.
Okay. Well, we were going to wrap it up anyway, so let's go ahead and do that now. Thanks everyone for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. Gregory, I hope you enjoy the E7X Alpha, and if anyone else wants to try it and hasn't gotten the link, definitely let us know. We'll get you that. We are only offering it to people that are watching or participating in the show. So yeah, just let us know there. Otherwise, look on the out and out for the update with Crypto Prevent, and we'll let you know more about when that update gets out. But we will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. for our Friday show. Of course, if you have any questions about our products and services in the meantime, always feel free to contact our support via the various means on our website. Past that, if you want to talk to us directly instead, you can always wait until tomorrow at 6 p.m. and we'll be more than happy to talk with you directly. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and thanks for joining us. Take us on out, Proctor.